Not a single one. That was the answer. Congressman Seth Moulton had just heard a general describe how American Patriot and THAAD batteries were protecting dozens of installations and cities across the Middle East. Teenagers fresh out of high school, officers fresh out of college, sitting in vans day and night, running the most complex air defense operation the United States military had ever conducted. So Moulton asked the follow-up question: how many American cities are currently protected by Patriot or THAAD batteries? General Guatline answered without hesitation: today there are none. That exchange, 12 words, is the center of everything that followed in this hearing, because it is not a rhetorical point. It is not a political attack. It is a documented fact stated by a senior military commander under oath in a congressional hearing room. The United States is protecting dozens of installations and cities in the Middle East with its most advanced missile defense systems, and 0 American cities, not one, not Washington, D.C., not New York, not any city where the people paying for these systems actually live. Moulton's next question was the one that no one in that room had a clean answer to. If Golden Dome is such a priority, if the administration has been saying that protecting the American homeland from missile attack is urgent, essential, a matter of national survival, then why are we expending so many Patriot and THAAD missiles at millions of dollars per copy in the Middle East, when we have not a single American city protected here at home? The general said they were changing the defense equation of the homeland. Moulton said that was not an answer to the question he asked. And he was right. To understand why that exchange matters, you need to understand what Golden Dome actually is and what it is supposed to accomplish. Golden Dome is the Trump administration's proposed missile defense architecture for the continental United States. The concept is to create a layered shield interceptors, sensors, tracking systems capable of defeating ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, hypersonic weapons, and drone threats directed at American soil. The stated theory of deterrence is straightforward. If adversaries believe that any missile attack on the United States will be intercepted and defeated, they are less likely to attempt one. The shield creates deterrence by making success seem impossible. That theory sounds reasonable on paper. Moulton's problem with it is that the current evidence suggests it is not working in practice. Here is what the hearing had already established before Moulton asked his first question. American air defense assets in the Middle East had performed extraordinarily well. The 32 batteries protecting dozens of locations had been intercepting drones and ballistic missiles at a rate that the general described with visible pride. Teenagers in vans, innovating in real time, handling threat complexity that nobody had fully anticipated, doing it magnificently. Iran had nonetheless continued to launch drones and ballistic missiles at American forces and Gulf allies at a rate higher than at any previous point in the conflict. That is the deterrence paradox Moulton was identifying. The missile defense is working tactically. The interceptors are hitting their targets. The technology is performing, and Iran is still shooting, more than ever. Which means that the presence of robust missile defense, the thing that was supposed to make adversaries less likely to attack, has not made Iran less likely to attack. It has just made the attacks less lethal. Deterrence, by definition, is supposed to prevent the attack from happening, not just limit its damage after it happens. Moulton put it plainly. The basic theory of deterrence with Golden Dome says that if we have a robust missile defense, our adversaries will not attack us. And by the way, we have incredibly robust missile defense across the Middle East right now. We have been praising it in a bipartisan way in this very hearing, and Iran has not stopped shooting in the least. The defense expert on the panel, Berkowitz, acknowledged that deterrence is a psychological phenomenon in the adversary's mind, that Iran may be a regime that is beyond deterrence, that successive administrations have tried engagement and Iran has continued to pursue nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles regardless. Moulton said he did not disagree with that observation, but that observation actually makes his point stronger, not weaker. If Iran is beyond deterrence, If robust missile defense does not stop them from shooting, then the theory that building Golden Dome will prevent adversaries from attacking American cities is based on a model that has just demonstrably failed in real time in the Middle East. And if the hope is that what did not work against Iran will work against Russia or China, that hope is not a strategy. Then Moulton added the layer that moved the exchange from strategic theory to personal testimony. He said he had seen Americans personally killed by Iranians, on the ground in Iraq, Marines. He said he understood the Iranian threat in a very real way, that he wanted to defeat them, that he wanted to win. But he did not want to get bogged down in a war in the Middle East that was consuming hundreds of billions of dollars and burning through the inventory of the most advanced missile defense systems in the world, while Washington, D.C. remained unprotected. That is the resource allocation argument underneath the strategic one. Every Patriot missile expended against an Iranian drone in the Middle East is a missile that is not sitting in a battery protecting an American city. Every THAAD interceptor fired at a ballistic missile launched from Iranian territory is an interceptor that is not in the inventory available for homeland defense. These systems have production rates, replenishment timelines, industrial base constraints. You cannot fire them indefinitely and have them available everywhere simultaneously. And Moulton's question, why are we expending this inventory in a war of choice in the Middle East when Golden Dome is supposedly the homeland defense priority, is not a question that anyone in that hearing room answered directly. The general said his focus was on homeland defense and he could not speak to overseas policy. That answer is technically accurate and substantively evasive. The overseas expenditure and the homeland defense inventory are not separate questions. They are the same question about the same missiles. What gets used there is not available here. The general who is responsible for protecting the American homeland from missile attack is the same general whose inventory is being consumed by a conflict that was described in the hearing as a war of choice. Moulton also raised the timeline disagreement that has been sitting in the background of the entire Iran nuclear debate. The administration has said Iran could have nuclear weapons capable of reaching the United States in a matter of days. The American intelligence community's own assessment is that the timeline is closer to a decade. That gap is not a minor discrepancy. It is the difference between an emergency that justifies immediate military action and a strategic challenge that justifies sustained diplomacy, sanctions, and deterrence architecture built over years. The entire logic of the current conflict, the urgency, the pace, the scale of engagement, rests on which timeline you believe. Moulton said the intelligence community's decade estimate should carry more weight than a political assertion of days. Nobody in the room challenged that directly. The hearing ended with the committee chair acknowledging that this kind of intellectual engagement, real disagreement, contested assumptions, pressure on the theory, was exactly what oversight was supposed to produce, that the conversation itself was valuable regardless of where it landed. But the question Moulton asked in the middle of it did not get an answer that resolved anything. Dozens of cities and installations in the Middle East, protected. 0 American cities, none. Golden Dome is the priority. The inventory is being consumed overseas. The deterrence theory has not stopped Iran from shooting. And the timeline for the threat the whole conflict is supposedly preventing is measured in a decade by the people whose job it is to measure it accurately. Those 4 facts, sitting next to each other in the official hearing record, are the argument Moulton was making. He did not get a rebuttal. He got acknowledgement that the conversation was important. The missiles are still being fired in the Middle East. Washington, D.C. is still unprotected. And the theory that spending hundreds of billions of dollars on a system that did not deter Iran will deter Russia or China is still the foundation of the policy. That question whether the theory holds is still open. Moulton put it on the record. Nobody answered it. There is one more layer this hearing captured. Moulton said he had personally seen Marines killed by Iranians in Iraq, not from a briefing room, from the ground. He said he wanted to win. He wanted to defeat them. And then he said he did not want to do it by getting bogged down in a Middle Eastern war that consumed the inventory and resources that were supposed to be protecting the American homeland and preventing a war in the Pacific. That is not a dovish argument. It is a strategic one. The concern is not that America is fighting. It is that America is fighting in a way that leaves Washington, D.C. unprotected and burns through the missiles that were supposed to be the foundation of Golden Dome, while the Pacific threat China, Taiwan, the naval and missile capabilities that represent the most consequential long-term strategic challenge the United States faces is building in the background. Every Patriot and THAAD interceptor consumed in the Middle East is one fewer available for a Pacific conflict where the adversary is more capable and the inventory requirements are orders of magnitude greater. Moulton wanted to be buying more interceptors, not expending them in a war of choice while spending hundreds of billions on a deterrence theory the current conflict had already demonstrated was not stopping Iran. The committee chair said the conversation mattered. The missiles are still going to the Middle East. The American cities are still unprotected. That gap is the question Moulton put on the official record. It is still waiting for an answer.